Hi, David here again, and this is the second video of the series that I'm referring to as God's supernatural interventions in my life. I'm doing this in response to a question by an atheist when we were having an argument, Christian versus atheism, as to, for me to explain examples of when I felt God had intervened supernaturally in my life. Last week I talked about that sort of word I got at church. And you may not think that's an example. That's it was a word you wanted to hear or whatever. You could be right. But there's something different. I mean, if somebody had sat down and said, oh yeah, you should do this, I wouldn't have changed in the way I did. When you get a word like that, it sort of changes your inner nature. Anyway, this week, as I said, finds me in 6 months later, in September 88, and me and my girlfriend have arrived in Bloomington. I've started studying at the fantastic Indiana University, taking music lessons there, and generally, having a fantastic time. My girlfriend says we need to go to church, and so we go to the closest church to our flat, which was full of happy, smiley people, rather noisy, which is not the experience that I had in church. But hey, this was America. I thought, well, anything goes in this place. So we went in there. And there, I say it was the first time I went in. My wife says, no, it wasn't. There was a second. Anyway, I went in, and first the second time, I'm sitting there listening to the preacher drone on. And all of a sudden, it gets really excruciatingly embarrassing and personal. This guy starts talking about me personally. And I just couldn't understand it. I thought, how does he know about me, this American preacher? I looked to the right and looked to the left. No, nobody was looking at me, but I felt it was so personal that people must be sort of knowing he's talking about me. The theme of his sermon was something to do with Christianity and tradition. When Christianity is practiced, whatever denomination you say, whatever area, whatever part of the world, a tradition will build up around that. And some of these traditions can be regarded as sacrosanct. Oh, you must do this, you must do that, you must do the other. He was basically making the point that it's very important to separate out what are traditions. They may be good, they may be bad, but they're not essential, and what is essential to Christianity. And the phrase he used is throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And it just made me, it felt personal, because sort of that's what I'd done. I ditched the whole lot and had no interest in any of it. But it wasn't just like, oh, I must investigate that. It really felt like almost a pressure. This was something really important that I had to do. Again, it wasn't, I was there to study music. This wasn't what I was here for. But anyway, I thought, okay, I need to investigate this. So what do? You go and buy a Bible. I went down the high street Bible shop, bought a Bible, went to lovely sunny day to a beautiful corner of the campus, sat down I didn't know when into the Bible from the next, and sat down to read it and opened it at random. And the bit that I opened was what I know now as the Old Testament, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. I didn't know any of that. It was just a random opening. But this particular bit of the Bible has a lot to do with blessings and curses. It's really hard-hitting stuff, very early on in the Old Testament, towards the beginning. And, I was reading it, and it was curious, it was interesting, until I reached another of these lines of phrase that made me snap it closed quickly. This phrase was, "See, I set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life that you and your family may live." Now this, again, I read that, and it wasn't like I'd read a lot of text and was interesting or whatever, but all of a sudden this line was something of a different order. This was, what I would regard now as God speaking to me. But that time, it was terrifying, actually. I didn't have a family. I had no interest in a family. I was there living with my girlfriend. I wanted to study music. But it became clear to me that there were choices being, how I understood at that time was that there was choices being put before me now that would have an impact on a whole life that I had to come. It was just terrifying, really. I just closed the Bible and thought, I'm not reading any more of that, and walked away from it. But of course, I couldn't walk away from that experience, and it sort of, again, was like a pressure on me. And I thought, well, what should I do now? I thought, I suppose I may as well go to that preacher chap. Maybe he knows about it. And so made an appointment to see the preacher. Went in, and he was a nice man, very helpful. I mean, he said to me he said, well, it's quite obvious what's happening. God is reaching out to you. Now, that sort of seemed odd, but given that, I had this experience in last Christmas where this really powerful word had come, which had changed the course of my life. And now this other word had come, 2 more things had happened, the sermon and reading this. When he said that to me, I thought, okay, well, that sounds like it could be what's happening, but what do you do with that? And he just said, well, it's up to you what you do with it. So, I walked away from that. And I mulled these things over. Not very long, to be honest. It was maybe a week or 2 or something like that. But after a couple of weeks, all I can say is that I thought about the things that had happened. I was there, and I thought, maybe there's something to this. Maybe, did I remember that prayer that I prayed earlier? I'm not sure. But I decided, I'm going to take a punt on this. I'm going to take a chance that actually this is true. There is a God in heaven who is interested in individuals personally. And so I still remember the exact bit of tarmac that I was walking over when I stopped, and just said, look, God, I believe you are true. I believe you are, who you are, and that you have a personal interest in people. And, I believe in you, and I give my life to you, or whatever I'm supposed to do. It was a prayer like that. I didn't know how to sort of repent and say the sinner's prayer or anything like that, but I acknowledged that there was a God there, and sort of in the best way I could, gave my life to him. And that was that. Went on my way for my lessons. But very quickly, another quite remarkable thing happened in the following couple of weeks. But I'm going to leave that for the next video. So I hope you found that interesting, and thanks for listening, and hopefully see you for the next one.